Hey everybody, how you doing out there? Matt Halpern here with episode 20 of the Chocolate Croissants podcast. I hope that everyone's had a great week. I hope you enjoyed episode 19, 18, 17, 16, 15, 14, and so on. We've been at this now for 20 weeks, and if you've been with us this whole time, as I've said before, you fucking rule. It is pretty awesome. We genuinely appreciate the continued support, all the feedback, all the ratings, all the conversation, all the questions. It's just been such a cool thing to watch this whole Chocolate Croissants community grow. Speaking of the community, we have a Facebook group. It is available to join at www.facebook.com/groups/Chocolate Croissants. You can go there. You can talk to other listeners. You can talk about the guests we've had so far. You can talk about our conversations. You can talk to each other. You can ask questions. There has been a overwhelming amount of support for one another in this group. People that have been truly vulnerable, that have been sharing their stories, sharing their challenges, asking for help, and it's always just a very positive thing to see the returned responses and the delivery of the help that's needed and the dialogue that really pushes people forward. So if you're curious about it and you're not in the group yet, we would love for you to go check it out. Join it. It's a private group. Even if you don't really do anything, just check it out, read through it, see what's going on. You don't necessarily have to join the conversation, but we would encourage you to do so. I also wanted to briefly ask you guys to do us a big favor. If you listen to this podcast via your phone, like I listen to my podcast on my iPhone, then we would be extremely grateful if you would open up the podcast app, open up the search, type in Chocolate Croissants, and then in the top right, click the subscribe button. If you do that, you will receive our new episodes every week, every Monday in your podcast app, and you won't have to search for it or look for us or even have to worry about typing in Chocolate Croissants. It'll just be there waiting for you, and hopefully we'll be able to provide you with some good shit. Along with that, any kind of review really helps us. We would love to know what you think, especially if it is a positive review, and any ratings that you'd be willing to give us would be great as well. The more listeners we get, the more people we can hopefully help. That's our goal here with this podcast. I'd like to take a quick second to thank our sponsor, Rode Microphones, who have provided the microphone, this USB mic that I'm using right now to broadcast into your ears. We would really be nothing without them, and we really appreciate all of their support. They offer all sorts of products that can help you in your own content capture, whether you're shooting from your iPhone and you want better sound, or if you have really nice cameras and really nice gear, or if you have your own podcast, they have products for you. So head over to rodemic.com. That's RODEMIC.com. Check out what they have to offer. There's some great people over there, and I think that you will be in good shape. If you want to use microphones of any kind, they have what you need. Now on to this week. Normally I write out kind of like just like a paragraph or like an outline or points for me to follow as I introduce the guests, but it was very hard for me to put into words how I feel about the guests that we had on the podcast this week. So his name is Daniel Barreda, and Daniel is a retired Army veteran. He is currently in school to be a dietitian. Daniel has an incredible story, and I really want to let him tell it, but just sort of a brief synopsis. So Daniel was in a horrific motorcycle accident a bunch of years ago where the result of that accident was that he could not use his left arm. It was paralyzed. Eventually, the arm had to actually be amputated, and he's actually much happier now with that situation, but from this accident, it really sort of led to quite a journey for Daniel. Everything from getting addicted to painkillers and medication that was provided to him because of this whole incident from the hospital, to getting involved with using much heavier drugs, getting past all of that, going to rehab, gaining tons of weight, losing tons of weight, getting healthy. There's just so many things that we talk about in this episode that are just, I think that a lot of people can relate to. And there are so many things in this episode that are just incredibly inspiring. All of the episodes we've done so far have meant a lot to me, but I think this one really just hit home, and it really moved me. It's definitely an emotional episode. You can hear each of us kind of getting choked up at different points in the conversation because there's just some really heavy topics that we bring up. So I would recommend that you really dig into this one. Pay attention, listen to the story. Daniel is incredibly articulate. In fact, I think that he should go speak about this publicly. He should talk about his story, tell his story, share it with other people, because I think it could help a ton of people. And hopefully you as a listener can either share this with someone else who may need that help, or maybe this will ring true with you and resonate with you and provide you with some sort of peace of mind if you're going through anything that he has experienced, or if you know anybody who's going through anything that he's experienced. So I'm going to leave it at that. I will let you guys dig into this. Thank you so much for tuning in. Episode 20 is a big deal for us. And as I said, Daniel Barreda is an amazing guest. Please enjoy this. Thank you very much. Enjoy.
Hey, everybody. We're here with Daniel Barreda, who is one of my really good friends. And Daniel and I, we met in school 3 semesters ago. And yes,
pronouns, pal.
Justin here. Nice. Justin here. And our guest today is Daniel Barreda. Is that how you pronounce your last name?
It's Barreda.
Barreda. And it's only going to take me now 2 years to learn his last name. So Daniel Barreda is one of my favorite people, one of my really, really good friends. We met 2 years ago in the nutrition dietetic program at school, and he literally saved my ass that semester. It was my first semester back to school. And I wouldn't have made it through that semester and subsequently the other ones without him teaching me and holding my hand and walking me through chemistry. And aside from that, Daniel is just he's a wealth of knowledge, and I love having conversations with him just because of everything he's gone through and where he is currently. And I love the things that he's into, all of the different crazy things that we can speak about, which we'll talk about on this podcast. But Daniel's just a wonderful person. He's an inspiration to all of us, and we're really pumped to have him on the podcast. So check it out. Dr. Daniel Barreda. Welcome, Daniel.
I appreciate it, guys. Thanks for the great introduction, Justin. And I haven't seen you guys in a while either. It's been a couple months at this point, right?
Yeah, last time I saw you, it was a few days before you were about to get your surgery.
Right. And just so nobody is that's listening doesn't really understand what we're talking about, I was in a motorcycle accident in 2011. Which took the use of my left arm. It was paralyzed from the shoulder down, really no use at all. And over the years, I guess, I decided that I wanted to kind of get rid of it. It was dead weight. It kind of slowed me down. There was a lot of different factors that went into it, but June 5th of this year, I decided to amputate above the elbow, and I really couldn't be happier. I'm glad to see you on this side. Go ahead.
So give us a few examples of what life was like having the arm but not having function of it. So how did it get in the way?
So there was a couple different ways. I mean, there were physical things and there were mental blocks. Just one off the top of my head that I can remember, me and Justin, he had been training me for a while in weightlifting, kickboxing, and stuff like that. And we decided one time beforehand that we were going to do a little. We both wrestled in high school, and we were going to have a little wrestling match. And it was going to be, we got into it. We clinched up and everything. And he ended up taking me over his back. And I didn't realize it until I stood up, but my entire left hand was black. I had done something. I didn't know how it got twisted up, but I ended up having to go to the hospital just because I had no idea if I broke it or not. I didn't really have pain receptors in that part of my arm. There were still some in there, just not that part. And so I ended up having to go to the emergency room. I spent a couple hours there just for them to tell me it was sprained. Nothing was really wrong, where this, where that. And it was just, there's little like things like that where I always felt like I was babysitting. There was nothing that I could do in my life where I could just do it, go and do it. I was always thinking, because it was limp. It really has I have no control over it. It was like a separate entity from me, And so that was really tough. and just the mental aspects as well. I can speak on that. It was hard for me at first to really feel normal. I felt like I was less than for a long time. I didn't feel complete. When I saw the people, they seemed complete, and I felt like something that was very, still broken. And it got even harder when I realized that I guess I could see my disability, and I couldn't know when other people were seeing it. And so I was always self-conscious in that factor. I didn't like that I always had to tell people my disability before they realized it. It was kind of hard to bring up. And now, now that it's gone, when people see me, they recognize it immediately. And that's big for me. That was very big because I don't have to go through the whole spiel. Like, if somebody asked me to hold a clipboard while I'm already holding something, I don't have to go, well, I can't. And then they look at me weird. And then I have to go, well, this. And it's just a lot of different things like that have kind of led me to this decision, which has been life-changing, to be honest.
I'm glad you brought that up, and I know we're going to dig into a lot of the mental aspect of your journey, and I think it's so important for people to hear because there are these different aspects of ourselves and different ways that we experience not only ourselves but the world. So clearly there were physical either limitations or just inconveniences because you had, the way you called it, this dead weight. But then also the mental aspect of that has and carries its own weight in itself. But going back to the physical part, do you know actually how much weight the arm was?
That's a good question. I meant to weigh myself after at the hospital. I never did. But it's such a relief. I have to imagine it was at least 5-10 pounds, if not more. It used to feel a lot of strain, especially like long while I was standing a long time. You know what I mean? I just don't feel it as much anymore. It feels a lot more free, which is it's been amazing, man.
I remember when we were working out at one point, we were talking about like phantom pain, sort of, that you were experiencing. And I think you said it felt like pins and needles, almost if like it was numb, but you couldn't really do anything about it. So do you have any of that now? And is that what it felt like when you did have the limb?
Yeah, that is how it felt. That was how the best way to describe it. When beforehand, it was like if your arm were to fall asleep per se, how you get that kind of like weird like needle feel in your arm. I would feel like that at times. I've also had like the best way I can describe it is like almost like a shot of electricity shooting through my arm, like really painful, really quick at times. It's a little different now. I guess I don't notice it as much today, but especially like right after the surgery. I actually had to look this up because I didn't really understand it at all. It felt like, so there's this sensation called telescoping in the amputee world. It's basically where my arm is cut off above my elbow, but after the surgery, I could feel my hand right where my amputation stops. And that's why they call it telescoping, because it's collapsing on itself, which was a very odd sensation. I didn't like it at first, but it's either to the point where it doesn't happen or I just don't notice it. It's gotten very normal.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, like, what was the recovery process like? Was it pretty quick?
Yeah, I mean, I think I was out of there in 2 days, and that was just will. I've been in and out of hospitals for a long time at this point. I've had a few different surgeries, and I've had some bad experiences with surgeries, so I like to get out of hospitals usually as quick as possible.
So that's physical recovery, but so far it's been about 2 months. What's the mental recovery?
Man, it was quick. I think it completed a mental process that I wasn't able to before, if that makes sense. I've been carrying, the way I can equate it is like, I had there was a lot of things wrong when the accident first happened in 2011. And it felt like I was almost carrying a dead family member with me. That's how I felt at times, it was rough. And this kind of was like the end of that grieving process, I guess, So
I know we have some topics to dig into, but I would be curious to hear, and I'm sure the listeners would be curious to hear about the accident, since we're kind of on the topic, if you're down to talk about it at all?
Of course, man. Of course.
Just to explain what happened, and then understanding that family member you're talking about carrying around for 6 years.
Right. Yeah. And I can get into that. So in 2011, I was currently in the Army. I'm retired now, but and we had actually just came home from an Iraq deployment. We were over there for 13 months, and when you're over there, you make a lot of money, and you have nothing to spend it on. So a bunch of us came home and bought motorcycles. We went through the motorcycle training sessions, everything you have to do, get your license and everything like that. And I had been riding for like a month or two. We were getting pretty confident, a bunch of us. I was out with my friend that day on May 2nd, 2011. We got up pretty early. We just wanted to ride around. We went out to his ex-wife's house to drop some stuff off for his son. And we rode around most of the day. And it got to the point it was like 9, 10 o'clock. It's getting a little dark out. We had to get up early for a run the next morning. And we decided to call it a night. And then we were riding down this road about a mile away from the base. And, I'm riding lead. He's a few feet behind me. And I don't know, this is where it gets a little hazy. The next thing I remember, I'm on my back. And I can fill in the blanks. Like, I guess after I had spoken with a lot of the people that were there, my friend, the police, some of the people that stopped and helped, there was a man towing a trailer in front of me at the stoplight, and I was slowing down, I guess, for a red light, and then it went green, and I accelerated through it. And I guess I from what I understand, I saw it at the last second, and I tried to get around the right side, and which was probably a mistake. My entire bike missed the trailer, but I caught it with my shoulder at like 35 miles per hour. And so it nearly took my shoulder off on the spot. The doctors, when I woke up, the doctors told me it was near amputation. They had to surgically reattach my entire shoulder back together. And so I do remember laying on the pavement. I remember my friend Aaron Johnson, which served with me. He was just kind of hovering over me, and there's this other guy. I had no idea who he was, but he had his shirt off because he was compressing my shoulder, and he was just asking me all these questions. Where are you from? Where do you serve? What do you do? Just trying to keep me awake. Because I was kind of in and out at that point. From what I understand, I broke some of the main arteries in my left shoulder, so I was bleeding out pretty fast. By the time the ambulance had got there, I lost half my blood supply. It was wild, man. But I made it through. I woke up. My parents had already been there. My command called my mom right away, and she was there before I even woke up. She drove 12 hours in the middle of the night to come see me, which was amazing, and I had a lot of support, and it was tough, man. It was really hard, but I don't know. I'm here today, and it's been an awesome experience the whole way around.
Do you wish in that moment that the doctors had amputated then?
That's a good question. I think other people have asked me that too. No, I think at first I needed it. I didn't feel normal. I didn't feel normal from the minute that it happened. I felt really alien compared to everybody else in the world. I really didn't even want to live, to be honest. For like the first 6 months, I just woke up every day thinking like, why didn't he just kill me? Why didn't God just kill me when he did this? But no, I really needed it. It gave me some sort of normalcy when I didn't really have any at all. So it was good at that point. Obviously, the end result is that I wanted it gone. But yeah, it was good all around the way it worked out.
I'm curious, just because you used the word God, and we're going to get into not only the trauma of this accident, but there's just a lot of shit that you've been through in a relatively short time. Is religion a thing in your life? Because I know oftentimes it really isn't for me, but in darker moments, I will turn to this internal thing that I will just call God. You know what I'm saying?
I do. Religion's never really played a heavy role in my life. I think that was just an outlet for me at the moment, just thinking that there is something bigger. I needed something to cling to, and I figured that, but at the same time, I was saying, God can't exist because he would have just killed me. That's how I felt right away. I said, God doesn't exist because he wouldn't have let me live like this, and that was tough. And I've had different things that have gone on, like drug addiction, which they rely if you go to an NA or AA meeting, they rely heavily on God. And so I've had to navigate that, as well as my own personal venture into Buddhism, which isn't necessarily about God, but it's about well-being and kind of like a moral sense of society, And so it's been an evolution, but yeah, it was me really kind of just being vain in the moment, just kind of cursing God if he was there,
That's interesting you brought that up, because obviously through Justin, you and I have known each other for a good amount of time now, but that's the first time I've ever heard you bring up Buddhism, and I don't think I ever have with you, but over 10 years ago, I was introduced to it and would go to these like actual sittings with monks. And that was really the first time that any sort of just philosophy resonated with me, and it seemed like, okay, this at least makes enough sense and doesn't feel like there's this like dogma of ritual and things like that, and it really gave me perspective on life. So were you at this point already addicted to any sort of drug, or this came post the accident?
So this was afterwards. After the accident, I was housed in a few different. I was in the hospital in Georgia for a little while, and they started it off. I think they were giving me fentanyl patches, prescription for Dilaudid, and a prescription for oxycodone, all together, which is kind of insane.
And this was just for the pain.
Just for the pain. And so after that, I was transferred to Walter Reed Medical Center in D.C., which is it's like world-renowned for military hospitals, great hospital. And they just never let the foot off the gas with the prescription pills. Now, I didn't help, I was kind of, a month or two in it, I'm taking fentanyl every day because I have a patch on. So I'm fully addicted and I'm fully aware of what's going on. And I played the cards the way I wanted to play them sometimes. I exaggerated things. I told them I needed more, or, I didn't help myself. But as drug addicts, that's kind of always the case. Withdrawal is a scary thing. It's scarier than the idea of dying from drugs. I can put it that way. And so usually we'll do whatever, to get our fix.
But when you said, I guess in your own words, but like you were kind of playing the game with them to get more of the drugs, was that because you really had intense pain, or you think you were actually physically and or psychologically addicted by that point?
Yeah, I think at first, of course, I needed the pain. I needed it for pain. But there were a lot of things I was hiding from myself at that point too. I was in a deep depression. And
were you receiving counseling in this process?
I was receiving the mandatory, but I wasn't seeking it. I had counselors that were, they were put on my case, and I would see them on a regular basis, but I wouldn't open up to them. I was to the point where I didn't feel like anybody could help me. I was drowning. I was drowning. I had no idea what to do. There was no idea what to do because I didn't want to do anything. I wanted, like I said, there was a 6-month period where I thought every day I wanted to die, And
well, what stopped you from suicide?
That's a good question. I think I never wanted to do it. I just wanted to die, if that makes sense. I never felt like I would be able to take my own life. And it was just kind of me putting one foot in front of the other every day and just trying to make something of it. Even when I was just, there was a point after the accident, I was having these nightmares. I guess nightmare isn't the best word, but it's to describe the feeling. I think it fits. The dream would be different, but it would always have the same theme, regardless of what's happening in it. You know, I didn't have my arm to begin with, and then progressively over the dream, it would come back until I could fully use it. And at that moment, I would always snap into reality, wake up, and it was so real. My first instinct would be to move my arm every single morning, and that was tough, man. I mean, it was to the point where I was crying every morning, man.
So you were having this trauma from this accident and the repercussions of the accident. You also served over a year in Iraq.
It's true, yeah.
So, I mean, were you carrying the weight of that as well?
Not so much. I mean, I was always, when I was over there, it was, we were in a good position. We were at like a central operating base instead of a forward operating base. It was more support. My job for the most part over there was pretty mundane. For like the first half, I was doing like a desk job, working like tech support for these random people that would have computer problems or radio problems or phone problems or anything else, just working a regular tech job. And for the second half, I got put on this team for the commanding general of the base. He would have to be like at different meetings across Iraq or even into Turkey and stuff like that, meeting with generals or, you know, important officials in the community. And I was tasked to be one of his comm team. We had a special Black Hawk helicopter fitted for the general where it had this amazing kind of technology. It's kind of, they call it Blue Force Tracker. But it's just like it's basically a map. It's a screen with a map of where you are, your helicopter route, and it has all the different units around you, maybe on the ground or flying by or whatever. And he would be able to talk to anybody that's coming by or where we're going, or I would map out the route for him. And pretty much anything comm related, I would do for him. So I got to see most of Iraq from like a bird's eye view, which was amazing. And just being able to see it from there was kind of breathtaking. Seeing like the Euphrates River, when you see it from that vantage point, it looks like man-made. The curves that it takes are just incredible. And we got to fly up north to Mosul, where sometimes we'd be flying over a place that it feels like home. There's grass, there's parks, there's houses. And as far as south as we flew over Baghdad. In the middle of the night, and it looked like Las Vegas. Like the streets are packed, and there's neon signs everywhere. I'm like, where the hell am I? You know? And but yeah, it's a very different experience compared to where you are there. I was fortunate enough to never come under any combat situation. I mean, my experience over there was very good, very positive overall, I think.
So I guess it's just interesting that with that type of experience, in a sense, it seems like psychologically you got out relatively clean, and then it ends up being this accident post all that, where life gets a bit darker for you. I know we're kind of jumping from different places in your past. Real quick, I want to jump into the present, like right now, where you are in your body, and you're emotional right now, and rightly so. And I think that, I mean, to me, that's like the definition of what a man is. To like fully feel and express one's truth. And it seems like that not only in our culture, but maybe also in a military culture, that isn't the most socially acceptable. Would you agree with that?
I would definitely agree with that. The military is a different beast. You gotta be a man there. You definitely do.
But what does that mean?
I think it's most of what society thinks is being a man. Not having your feelings get in the way. Not having to cry in front of people, not being able to deal with everything yourself, and not kind of seeking the help that you may need sometimes. I can't speak for the entire army, of course, But I have seen that type of behavior just in general, and I think a lot of people see that too. I think a lot of veterans that go through some of these issues also understand that, hey, I need to, regardless of what people think, I need to get help for me. There's 22 veterans committing suicide every day, I think, in this country, and there's a reason for that. There's a society that built in the Army that's creating that, I believe. It shouldn't be that high. There's no reason for it to be that high. And for it to be there now, I think a lot of people need to look at what's going on,
So I know this is the first time you're really publicly sharing this. So how does it feel right now actually going through this process?
In regards to what?
In regards to being vulnerable, feeling your feelings, and actually sharing your history and your truth with the world.
I feel really good about it. I mean, I think I've had practice with this before. Just kind of, that's what drug treatment does to you. Going through NA and AA and rehab and stuff like that. I mean, that's really what it's about, being vulnerable. And at this point, I feel like my vulnerability is more of I don't know the best way to put it. Kind of like it helps me. It especially with my situation and my story, I think me being vulnerable in front of people really gives them an opening into me, and it gives me a lot of respect, just a way into people's heart to let them to be vulnerable as well. I remember I was at a meeting one time, an AA meeting. I think it was AA. And this guy was up there talking. He was sharing his story, and it was pretty long. People found it pretty funny because he was just talking about really crazy stuff, aliens and all this craziness. But I remember sharing afterwards because he had such a great point. He said that there have been many men that have done this before me. Much more manly and strong and better men. But some of them aren't here anymore, and I am, and I mean, it resonated a lot with me, man. I shared a story with him that I wasn't too keen on sharing for a while. When the accident first happened, and I was at Walter Reed, it's such a crazy issue to have, but there was this day I had my shoes came untied, okay, and I didn't know what the fuck to do because I can't tie my shoes. I still can't tie my shoes, but I knew that I wasn't going to ask another soldier, and I knew I wasn't going to ask another man to tie my own shoes. And I think I walked around for 45 minutes to an hour looking for somebody to tie my shoes, it's an insane idea. It's an insane idea. And I'm lucky that the issue that I had in the moment wasn't life-threatening, because my idea of what a man is was getting in my way of seeking help. You know what I mean? Just to bring that all the way back around. And that's a lesson I've had to learn. I have to be my own man and my own definition of a man, regardless of what that means, to save my own life,
I really hope you sharing these stories, this helps break down the idea of what people think of when they say about being a man. And I know we see this with like Jordan and I think Matt as well. We can see this with our dads and their generation, and just kind of sucking it up and trudging forward and not sharing your feelings. And I have so much respect for you and admiration for you being vulnerable and sharing your stories, and as Jordan would say, sharing your truth. And I really hope this becomes the new norm and more socially acceptable. And I know it's something that Daniel and I, we train together in martial arts, and we both. We love watching martial arts, and recently we both watched John Jones versus Daniel Cormier. Mm-hmm. And you put so much into it, and the loser of the fight that night, he ended up he was crying, and this was like public in front of millions of people, and there was a bit of there was a bit of like backlash from people saying that this is not acceptable. You're a man, tighten up that lip kind of thing of like, what are you doing crying on national TV? And there were fighters that I think you would think of those kind of people just like a soldier, a warrior, throwing down for him, going to bat for him, and saying like, dude, shut the fuck up. Like, this guy puts everything into it, and if he needs to break down then and not go backstage and break down, like, who the fuck cares? Let this guy have his moment and do his thing. And I really hope that in seeing that, I have more faith, and faith is a bit restored, that people are breaking down what I think is a misconception that you have to be, a certain way to be a man. And I really hope that you sharing your story will help others be able to share theirs and be able to be vulnerable and share their feelings.
Speaking of misconceptions, we have a bunch of questions from people in the Facebook group, and one from Sean Gilbert from Poughkeepsie, New York. He was more talking about misconceptions about military or drug users, and asking if you, Daniel, wanted to clear up any or just share your perspective on how maybe you feel the world thinks of both people in the military and also drug users.
Yeah, I spent a little time thinking about this question. It's a good one, and I appreciate it. I don't know too many misconceptions about the Army. I was thinking about that for a while. I will say that just like any population in the world, the Army is just made up of regular people. And so I think a lot of people get carried away. Not to say that people in the Army don't deserve to be thanked for their service and such, but you don't know these people and you don't know what they've done. I mean, there's been a lot of terrible things that have happened in the Army. I mean, you can point to Abu Ghraib, where the soldiers were taking pictures of like bodies on the ground and like peeing on them or whatever they were doing. And that's not somebody you would want to thank, but who knows who these other people are. I remember in rehab, I heard a story of a guy that he was in Iraq, and him and his unit would go around raiding pharmacies in Iraq for pills. And I'm not trying to paint the Army in a bad light. I just want to make people understand like we're just we're regular people. You may look up to us, but we're not this crazy, driven force that just does what they're told and that's it. We're people like anybody else, and we make mistakes, and some of those mistakes are really big. But in the same light, I mean, there's some really great people out there. You have the Pat Tillman story and things like that. And so people should just remember that, too, that it's not some mythical force that we have. It's just regular people that just decided to take this job,
Can you go back a bit and tell us why you decided to enter the Army?
Yeah, I can do that. I was kind of, after high school, I really didn't have any plans. In high school, I was kind of... I didn't really care too much, I got bad grades. I got enough to get by, and I never really thought about the future. And that's probably because of some issues at home and stuff that I had to deal with. But I ended up kind of just walking through life without really any thought as to what I was doing. And I worked at Walmart, like unloading trucks, and I delivered pizza for a place called Pat's Pizza. But other than that, like, I didn't know what I was doing. And I ended up getting in trouble, not to get too specific, but my father ended up saying, you probably need to get away from this area. It's not good for you, and, I was in the military. It helped me, and maybe it can help you as well. And it did. It was a really good experience. I don't want to, like I said, I don't want to cast a bad shadow because it was a great experience for me, but I don't know if I'd want to do it again. It was very good for me to learn some of the lessons. Just knowing that you're capable of more than, or I'm capable of more than I thought I could. And any obstacle that was thrown my way, I could make my way through it. And I think that was an awesome thing to learn. Learning discipline, integrity, and things like this. It's very big ideas in the military. You have to kind of live these things, which is great. And just to go back to the question, I think he asked about drug addicts as well. I think there's this crazy idea that like drug addicts are lazy and they're stupid and they don't want to do anything. nobody at 5 years old say, I'm going to grow up and be a drug addict. You know, that's not how it works. They're lost. You know, they're really lost. And they're so lost that they're willing to risk their lives for this thing that makes them not feel lost. You know, and so we're kind of in this weird spot in a society where we're being overtaken by drugs and we don't know how to fix it because people are feeling empty. And when we can get those people back on track, that's when we can really fix this thing, you know?
When you were in that space, can you think of something that you needed that would have helped that you weren't getting?
Man. I just needed to get back on track. I didn't know what I wanted out of life, you know, and now I do. And the thing is that, like, even after I stopped doing drugs, I didn't really know where I was going, and that was a risky place to be in, because it's very easy to go back to something when you're not driving towards anywhere, you know. And so, yeah, I mean, purpose was what I was looking for a lot of the time. It felt very empty, and I just felt like a truck stuck in the mud, just spinning tires, you know. So yeah, that purpose is the main thing I think a lot of people are looking for in this life, where we're just kind of working a 9-to-5 job and going home and paying the bills and going to the grocery store and going to sleep and doing it again. And where does that go? Where's your ambition? You know, where's your drive if you're doing that type of life? If you're just working to get by, you know, it's. I think for a lot of people it's not there, and that's why we're turning to heroin, cocaine, you know, anything we can get our hands on, you know.
And to argue that point, because I know for all of us here, that's not or hasn't always been like the desirable type of lifestyle for us. But I can see in the sense that I don't think work necessarily has to be a passion, but maybe earning and supporting a family, that can be the purpose. Right. Yeah. So I don't think it's just a 9-to-5, but I think if there really isn't any purpose or vision or meaning of the way that one spends the majority of their life, I think that's where the emptiness can start to grow.
I completely agree with that. You're right. And I think there's plenty of purpose outside of work. I mean, even if it is just your family. I mean, my father loves his family, and he'd do anything for them. So he enjoys going to work every day and doing his best that he can do. I think he also enjoys his job, but I think that's one of his main drivers is his family. He's got quite a few kids that he's still taking care of. And a wife and everything, yeah. And there's plenty of other hobbies that people can get into, but just for me, like, I didn't have any of it. You know, I didn't have a family that I was taking care of. I didn't have a hobby outside of work, and I didn't really, especially after I got to Walter Reed. I was in the Army, but I wasn't working necessarily. I wasn't really doing anything. I was going back to my room on base and just sitting around doing nothing, man. It was a miserable existence, and it was very easy to get addicted to drugs.
To tie up another loose end for those listening, can you go through the progression that got you into then doing drugs?
Starting from where exactly?
I mean, I guess take it from what point. I guess you want to go from the prescriptions. They were heavily medicating you, and you were they were willingly giving you whatever you really wanted, and you were playing it up a bit. And then how does it go from that into using street drugs?
Yeah, sure. I can do that. I mean, I grew up in near Baltimore, just north of. And so I was in D.C. at Walter Reed. And, you know, they're throwing medication at me like crazy. Like I said, fentanyl, Dilaudid, Percocet, anything I wanted pretty much. And they just didn't have any desire to take it down for the longest time. Like I said, I played them as much as I could. You know, it still hurts. You know, I'm in pain. You know, we have surgery coming up. Just keep me on it. And it finally got to the point where they were like, okay, this is enough. We need to start weaning you off. And I wasn't really interested at that point. I was fully addicted to all these pain medications. And so the area that I grew up in is in Harford County. It's known for a lot of prescription medication. And I knew a lot of people growing up that were, you know, doing things like that. And so after they decided to take me off of the medication, I started making phone calls. And And there was this one guy, I'd rather not name him just because, yeah, okay. But he ended up answering, and he's like, we're not really doing prescription medication anymore. We're doing heroin. And I signed up right up for it, man. I kind of knew that heroin was basically the same thing, just the illegal version. And, you know, I met up with him, and I picked him up in Harford County. We drove to Baltimore, and I started, you know, buying $300 worth of heroin every couple days, man. And it was wild. It was just so easy. I could get as much as I wanted, and I could just drown everything out, drown all the worries, all the depression, the sorrow. I didn't have to worry about my situation anymore. And that's what I was really running away from. A lot of that is, like I said, I wanted to die. So there's nothing I liked about myself, you know, and so I could just run away. I could just not deal with it 24/7, and it was much easier to just drown it out than to actually have to deal with it, you know?
Yeah. So there's two questions. One I have, which maybe we can just save for later because it's more of a... I'll just ask it now. This will change the mood a little bit.
Go for it, man.
But I'm curious, and then we'll get to the question from one of our group members. I forget who was telling me this or where I heard this, but I think during the making of Pulp Fiction, in Pulp Fiction, there's a scene where John Travolta shoots up heroin. And I think the story I heard was that he wanted to act that out correctly. Oh. So he asked maybe Quentin Tarantino or someone else what it was like to do heroin. And the way that whoever it was described it was, it's like getting really drunk on tequila and then getting into a really hot bath. And I was just curious if that makes sense to you.
I guess I was never really into alcohol, so I can understand what he's saying. It definitely makes sense. I would say most people that I have been in like rehab with and have known that have done have had different addictions usually say it's better than sex, and that usually works. You know, it's better than anything that I have probably ever felt. In just a in the moment kind of way. You know, obviously it's terrible, and it had terrible effects on my life, which have kind of brought me to where I am. But in the moment, when you're actually shooting up, I mean, you can feel it go through your veins and go all the way to your head, and you get lightheaded, and everything melts. It is just every single worry that you have is gone, and all you care about is just like that moment where you can just not hear anything. But
that's why they call it chasing the dragon, because you're never going to actually catch that again.
Not like the first time. You can keep upping it until you overdose or something. But yeah, it's tough to hit the first couple times. I remember my first time. I actually started buying heroin and snorting it. And I always told myself I was never going to shoot up. I was never going to be that person. But you learn early in rehab that anything that you say you're not going to do is just something you're going to do in time. Mm-hmm. And I ended up doing it. I just remember my friend, the same guy I was saying earlier, we would go down there and buy heroin, and he would shoot up, and I'd snort it, and he would feel it instantly. And it looked amazing. And when I would do it, it was just okay. And so, you know, he'd ask me from time to time, do you want me to shoot you up? I can do it for you. And I was like, no. And then one time I said yes, and I never looked back from there. I mean, that was probably it's just an experience. It's hard to put into words. You know, a lot of people say that about psychedelics. I could probably say the same thing about heroin, because it's just hard to really talk, like really express the feeling in words. It's just it's mind blowing.
Sure. Yeah. Well, so that brings me to where my mind went, and then this is a question from our group member Jeffrey Kerr from Brisbane, Australia, and he wants to know basically at what point did you say enough is enough and give up the needles? What was the final straw for you to realize that you needed to make a change? And then he eloquently said, addiction is a motherfucker.
I love the question. Thank you. You know, I wish I had some like come to Jesus moment that I could sit here and say, but I don't really have anything like that. You know, I got caught in a very odd situation where I was forced to go to rehab. I didn't necessarily even want it. I had just gone down to Baltimore to get some more heroin, and I was coming back to the base in D.C., and I parked, and I'm walking to my room, and I see my sergeant waiting outside for me, and I'm like, what is going on? And, he says, Barreda, come here. And, so I go, and, he's like, come on, we got to go to your room. I'm like, what are you talking about? Just come on. And we walk to my room, and it's wide open, doors wide open. And I have a couple military police officers, my commanding officer, my first sergeant. My entire chain of command basically was in my room waiting for me. I had started slipping up. I guess I told somebody that I probably shouldn't have told. And they told my command, which went to my room and found some of the empty, pill caps that they fill them up in Baltimore with. And then they searched me and found the extra 30 pills in my pocket. And it was basically it was a really bad situation because they had actually thought I had so much heroin on me that they thought I was selling to other soldiers. And I quickly just, told them my entire story. That way that wasn't the case. I had enough where they thought it wasn't just for my own consumption. That's how bad my addiction had gotten, and so I ended up, the wheels started turning with my command, and 3 to 4 days later, they were sending me on a plane to Alabama to Bradford Health Services inpatient facility, which probably saved my life, man. It's one of the best experiences I've ever been through.
But is that how you were feeling at the time? Was there a sense of relief and finally the truth is out and I can get some help? Or was that part of the addiction still fighting that?
Well, let me tag on to that. Were you met with a support system through your chain of command? Like, what was their position? Were they pissed at you, or were they supportive and therefore like, all right, look, this is a problem. We need to get you healthy. We're sending you away. I mean, what was the tone?
Yeah, just let me think real quick, just to make sure I hit both of you guys. Well, my initial thought when that happened was, well, first, oh shit, and then I didn't really want to stop at that moment. I did. So I guess addiction is tough because I always wanted to stop. I had tried many times before. There were actually, the Army does urinalysis tests, and I would always be not using at the times when they were trying to get a test from me because I was actively trying to stop. But withdrawal is such a motherfucker that it is nearly impossible to get through without some sort of support and help. It's doing that by yourself is unimaginable. And so it was nice that it was out there. I was greeted with mixed, conflicting ideas. There were people that didn't care. I could definitely tell. They thought I was the scum of the earth, and I specifically remember, my sergeant's look on his face when they were pulling needles out of the trunk of my car, and that was really tough. But there was one sergeant that really wanted to help me. Yeah, I think I guess he thought he knew enough about me to know that, I could really use the help, and if they got me into treatment, I could really turn this thing around. And I'm really indebted to him because he's really the one that kind of changed it from, just get rid of this guy to, send him to treatment and then let him do whatever he's going to do after he gets out of the Army, but at least give him a shot, and like I said, I got sent to Alabama. And I did a lot of resisting at first when I went into treatment. Like I said, I didn't go on there on my own. I was forced there by the Army. So, we had counseling every day, and I just wanted to mask my emotions. I didn't really want to talk about anything. My counselors had a hard time with me for the first couple weeks. Luckily, I was there for 3 months, and towards the end, some of it sank in, But it was a fight the entire time. And but like I said, it's one of the best things that's ever happened,
At what point in treatment do you drop your guard and decide, I think it's time for me to let go and start opening up?
Yeah, that was tough, man. I mean, it kind of gets comfortable, I guess, is the way I can put it there. I mean, there's a lot of that there. There's a lot of, people throwing their heart out, in counseling sessions and to random strangers that they don't know. And I guess I kind of got broke down into it. It was hard. I was hiding things from myself, I think, so it was, even for them to break me down, I was still trying to break down my own barriers, and it took me a long time. And I think, there's this one instance in rehab, I guess, that always sticks out, that's kind of really helped me along. We would bunk up. We'd have 2 people to a room, and my roommate was getting ready to graduate from the program, and he was packing and everything. He was like, "Hey, man, can I talk to you in the room?" I was like, "Yeah, of course." And we sit down, and he says, "I've really appreciated being your roommate." He said, you're a pretty amazing guy, You don't, we have so much to do here, and you take it on just as well as any of us, Whether it's cleaning or, just anything around here that you have to do, you don't complain about your disability, you just do it. And he closed it off with saying that you inspire me. And that was tough for me in the moment. I didn't really understand it because I was still under the idea that, I'm a broken person. I'm a piece of shit. And for somebody to say that was really hard for me to understand. Now, that's been important for me, a year or 2 down the road when I really could understand that concept that, my disability and me being open with people has really given me an in with people, like a way to inspire, get people to like give a little drive in their life. It's just say like, wow, he's just living his life. What do I have to complain about? And I see the same thing with other people as well. I can say the same thing. It's just stop my pity party when I was at Walter Reed, and I would see people so much more fucked up than me at Walter Reed. I mean, you're talking about people coming back from war, and so people would be, quadriplegics being pushed around on carts, and seemingly happy. At least I don't know them, I just see what I see, and I'm kind of like, what's this pity party about? These people have so much worse than me. And I can do the same for other people, just by living my life and living it to its fullest, just kind of pushing forward. That was a huge moment for me. One that I couldn't understand in that moment, but it's definitely resonated a lot in the months and years afterwards. I remember there was a moment, my mom... She was out on a hike by herself, and she ended up like breaking her ankle, like miles away from her car, and she was able to get back to her car somehow and phone me up, tell me to meet her at the hospital. And she said the only thing that kept me going was thinking about everything that you've been through.
That's huge. Well, I mean, dude, even you opening up on this podcast undoubtedly will inspire so many people. And I think a lot of people will face things in their lives, potentially even in this audience that are listening, that may draw back to this story and push through.
I really hope so. That's why I'm here. I just want to be able to tell my story and kind of hope people can pull something from it,
With all of these layers to the onion of your story, it's crazy. We haven't even really unpacked what brought you and I together.
That's very true.
And I know we've been doing a lot of jumping around, but I really want to get into, there was a point in your life where you ended up gaining a pretty significant amount of weight and then losing a real significant amount of weight And then somehow it led you to the point where you realized through telling your stories of something totally different from everything we've even talked about already, you could help people in a whole other inspiring way. So I want to go back a bit. Can you tell us what initially happened where you ended up gaining this weight? And then can you take us through the progression of then losing the weight and then what brought you to going back to school?
Yeah, that would be great. And that kind of piggybacks off of like getting that drive back in my life. You know what I mean? After rehab or during rehab, really, there wasn't much emphasis on what we ate, and so I ate a lot, it's kind of exchanging one addiction for another type of deal. It's very common in addiction, and I think I replaced a lot of it with food. And I came back from 3 months out in Alabama 60 pounds heavier. I was 285 pounds. My BMI was on the cusp of being morbidly obese, just sloppy, just disgusting at times. And I got to the, I was at a physical therapy session sitting on a machine, and there was a mirror next to me. And I looked in the mirror, and I didn't recognize who I saw anymore. And that was kind of the tipping point where I was like, something has to change. And I started, just trying stuff. I didn't really understand what I was doing. Like a lot of people, I think, nobody really learns how to eat in this country. There's no classes in school that says, you should be eating this over this, or this is why you should be eating this. We just kind of, food is the last thing we think about in life most of the time. A lot of people are ready to go to work and they're ready to play, but when it comes to eating, they just want something that tastes good, regardless of how good it is for your body. And so I just started looking online, looking for different ways to lose weight. And what really resonated with me was a really low-carb diet. It was mostly meat. Probably not the best idea, but at least it got me started, and I was trying to make a change. And in a couple years, I went from 285 to 160, which was, like I said, it was an unhealthy diet. So I lost a little bit more than I should have. And I kind of I've yo-yoed back and forth since then, but I've been able to hold a pretty consistent weight for the past couple of years, which has been incredible. And that's kind of what led me to Morgan State with you. After I left the military, I started going to college for computer networking, which I hated. I hated the entire time. I spent an entire year in that program, and it kind of came to a head when I'm supposed to be doing my homework for computer networking, and I'm looking up like the different health benefits of types of oils, for food. And I was just thinking to myself, like, why would I stick myself in something that I can't stand when I'm looking up food, when I'm supposed to be doing my work. And it kind of changed from there, my entire mentality. And I switched schools, I switched majors, and I've got into nutrition science, which has been my driving force for the past couple of years, man. It's been awesome.
I'm really glad you brought that up, Daniel, because, question that we've answered previously on this podcast, but it's one of the most common questions that we get deals with passion and what to do as far as school or career and aligning that with what you're passionate about. And for me, oftentimes, what I would say in response is, well, pay attention to your thoughts and your behaviors when you don't have any responsibilities. And for you had this responsibility of school, but yet you were, for whatever reason, attracted to looking up oils for the purposes of cooking. And I think it's really cool that you, one, paid attention to that behavior, but two, said, you know what, I'm actually going to choose this instead because I have this natural desire to go in this direction.
Yeah, I think I remember hearing you guys talk about that on like episode 5 or 6, somewhere around there. But yeah, I mean, it was just me listening to myself. It's been such a great experience, man. I can't even put it into words. It's just taking that dive even from from step 1 to step 2, like changing my career goals. I mean, it's really terrifying, but going through something that terrifying is so gratifying when it works out the way you want it to, and even if it doesn't, that's okay, because it's good to take risk. You know what I mean? It was to be honest, it was quite scary changing schools and changing majors, especially with already a year into my major. I didn't really understand what I was doing, but I just had to trust my head. You know what I mean? It was either do that or be stuck in a job that I didn't really see, fit for me.
I totally agree with what you're saying. As going through, I guess it started in middle school, through high school, into college. I was deathly afraid of science. I always just found it way too overwhelming, too much material. It was just too damn hard, and I couldn't do it. And I ended up going to college, making up a music business degree, because all I cared about at the time when I was in college was playing shows and booking shows and doing all these things. And it took me, I think I graduated the first time in college, I was like 23 or 24, but it took me till I was just about 30 to get over that fear and just bite the bullet and realize like there are all these people who came before us that have taken on science as a major in undergrad or in graduate school, and they were okay with it. And again, it's the same thing of it is so scary, especially Daniel and I were both, we're more pushing 30 and we're going to school with a lot of like 18, 19-year-olds that are still figuring a lot of things out. But for us, we have such a heightened sense of purpose for being in school and what we're trying to learn, and then diving into some of the more like esoteric parts of nutrition. We absolutely love it. And I guess both of us would highly recommend to people, if you do get that itch for something, scratch it, go for it. You'll be so, hopefully it'll pan out and you'll be so happy that you ended up doing that. But there were a couple things, at least one thing I want you to unpack with when you're doing the weight loss, something Matt and I speak about often, and Matt's currently practicing, is intermittent fasting. And I think that was a tool you've spoken about, we've talked about before, that you said really helped you, and then even doing a full 24-hour fast once in a while. Is that something you could get into?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great tool, I think, in the toolbox of just overall health. There's a lot of information out there that's talking about, the body really needs to go in a fasted state. I think there are studies coming out that say some of the survivors of concentration camps are living the longest. And there's a direct correlation to the fact that they just didn't have food. And it's really important to kind of give your body some rest. We work our bodies 24/7 because we're constantly putting food in there. Your liver has to continue working, your stomach has to continue working, your small intestines, your large intestines, they never get a break because we eat from the time we wake up till the time we go to sleep. And there's a full process that your body has to go to kind of metabolize all these foods. And so if you give it, a good 14, 15, 16, maybe 18 hours, in between. It sounds crazy to some people, I'm sure. I have no doubt. But fitting your food in a 6-hour window isn't as hard as some people may think it is. And, it really gives your body the chance to not only rest, but start recuperating. There's a lot of different cellular processes that only happen in a fasted state. Your body is actually able to, reverse some of the damage that has happened while it's not having to constantly chew up this food, and it's really important. And I think if more people would try it, it could really have an impact on our healthcare system,
I was just going to say, so I've been, now it's like 4 weeks about, we're like
maybe even longer. I think a month sounds right.
It's about 4 weeks. I started with 14 hours fasting, 10-hour window of eating, just to break into it and like get comfortable with it, which I found to be really easy. Then I just bumped it up 2 hours. So then I just started doing 16/8. And that's basically what I've been doing, although it does kind of venture between 18/6 and 16/8. So what I mean by that is 16 hours of fasting and then an 8-hour window to eat, or an 18-hour window of fasting and 6 hours in which I'm eating. But Justin and I've heard people talk about intermittent fasting and say It doesn't really matter what you eat in that period because it's, your body's going to do the work that it needs to do and break it down, and it'll take the nutrients and it'll expel the rest. But there's got to be a optimization that happens if you eat well in that window and actually give your body the things that it really needs. So part of what I've been working on with Justin, what we did work on was we just made like a list of like all the different kinds of foods. So everything from meats to what carbohydrates to eat, what fruits, what vegetables, what snacks, things like that. And I now have this really huge selection of items that I can pick from, and it's really easy to eat healthy and fast this way because I find that when I eat foods that are healthier, I don't have the same cravings that I did with like eating constant shitty sugar packed like white flour pita chips kind of things, like that kind of stuff. Like I don't feel the same way. But for me, another huge thing about this now is that like if once a week I really want something, fuck it. Like I'm going to eat whatever I want and enjoy the shit out of it because I know that it is the minority now of how I eat, not the majority. And it's just, my point is that it's really easy to do this, and it seems like it's just a no-brainer, and people should be doing it, and there's nothing really that hard about it if you know what to eat, and you can just like kind of keep yourself busy, for the time that you're fasting, or, get on a good sleep schedule.
Yeah, I completely agree, man. And I think the main thing you said there was that your bad food that you're eating is the minority. Like you said, once a week. If you have 3 meals a day, that's 24 meals in a week, or 21. I'm sorry, bad math. So if one of those meals is not so great, I mean, overwhelmingly, you're doing well. You're hitting the 99% marker. You know what I mean?
I think Matt and I originally, we talked about something of a 16-5 or an 18-3. Because if you're going to do breakfast, lunch, and dinner every single day, obviously we just did the math, it's 21. And, if you are in the majority of eating really healthy meals and giving your body really what it's asking for, it should be, as Matt was saying, that should be the most optimal. You're trying to get to this place of optimization for your body. I actually think it's really wonderful that between Matt, Daniel, and I, we do have this really interesting bridge connection, especially through a couple key figures that we listen to and dissect, and they all run in a group of like the Tim Ferrisses of the world and Dom DiAgostino and Rhonda Patrick. And I'm not sure, I guess now we know what sent you back to school, but it was definitely listening to people speak about topics like this and really getting fired up about it. I mean, like a euphoric high of just like, fuck yeah, this is amazing and this is so cool. And right. I was like, I have to do this. If I don't do this, then I'm kidding myself.
Well, it's so attainable when you really think about it. And then when you hear the science behind it, it's undeniable. Like your body wants to stay alive as long as possible. Like everything in you are made to survive, right? Mm-hmm. And if it's a simple choice of like eating less hours in a day, which is a great start right there. But then also you can eat like better foods. And you know what else I found? Because I'm eating less meals, paying a little bit extra for like good quality food and produce isn't that big of a deal because I'm cutting out like essentially one meal a day.
It's balanced.
So I'm not going through those foods as fast as I would, and I can kind of make the buck last a little bit longer. But it's so easy. And everything that you and I, Justin, have been working on has been, at least with fitness and nutrition, has been what is the easiest, most simple things that people could do to stay fit and stay healthy. And to me, with exercise, it's coming up with like the kind of routine that we've put together for our Fun 4-6 program, which is 10 minutes a day of exercise, if that.
Even down to 2.5 minutes, 2.5 minutes at a time.
And then intermittent fasting, which is by no means anything that any of us have created. As you said, this links back to like Holocaust survivors surviving longer than other people because they were forced to be in that situation.
I mean, this even goes back to like hunter-gatherer times of we were more active, which is great. So we were out there moving and trying to find the next meal. We were using all of this energy that was being expended to catch or trap or hunt or gather for the next meal. And then whatever was there is what you would gorge on, you would eat, and then you don't know when your next meal would come. And I think this is just playing into our DNA more so than the current technological advances that have made us weak of sorts, where it's easy to go to the grocery store. It's easy to walk to a restaurant. It's easy to not have to really pick up a finger and do any of these things.
Yeah, I completely agree. And to your point about the DNA, like our society has progressed so much within the past couple decades. Evolution takes thousands and thousands of, if not millions of years. You know, we can't catch up to the progress that we're making. And that's really what set me on this course, is that once I started this journey, man, like it was just amazing to see what some small changes can really make in the health of a person, you know, and just what we're eating. Like before I even started this track, man, I didn't really, food was never a thought. Like I never got that deep into it. It was just whatever tasted good. You know what I mean? Whether it's pizza or pasta or whatever else, dessert. But just seeing the deeper level of it and how it really affects your entire life has been amazing.
Do you have any sort of vision right now for what you'd like to do with the knowledge and the degree that you're earning?
Yeah, I mean, I have a few ideas. I mean, overall, I'd love to be able to set up like a community center and just kind of see people that were in the same situation as me. Somebody that gained weight, you know, they didn't really know how it happened or what to do afterwards. And, you know, I just want to be this person for them saying, you know, I've been there. We can get you there. It's not a problem. Let's do this together and kind of like push each other to be better. You know, I want to really be ingrained in a society somewhere where it's kind of this this place where people want to do better, you know? And if not, maybe like maybe a hospital setting. I'd also like to work with people that are sick. Diabetes is really taking a toll on this country right now. And I think it's completely reversible, you know? I think we can completely get rid of it. We just need to make some small changes in everyday life. And, I mean, we can get there, man.
Yeah, well, the diabetes thing was another big, like, no-brainer kind of reason why the intermittent fasting was great too, because you can reduce your insulin levels, right? You can essentially prevent certain diseases. Is that what you're learning as well?
I mean, yeah. I mean, the studies are still being done at this point, but yeah, there's a lot of different things that intermittent fasting helps, and it can definitely help your resting glucose level, especially if you're not eating for 14 to 18 hours a day. I mean, obviously, that's going to have a huge impact on your glucose levels and your insulin intolerance. You know,
I'm curious how it affects your blood pressure too. I would imagine that can help lower it.
Yeah, I haven't done any work on myself, but I can imagine anything like that is definitely going to create a lot of good health benefits for you, you know?
Yeah, for sure. Well, so there's a couple other questions from the group. One here from Joe Hamilton from Bath, England, where I'm headed shortly. He said, wow, what a mad story. It sounds like you've been through some heavy shit. And he wanted to know, just at your lowest moments, what did keep you going? So the points where you said you were the most lost.
Yeah.
There had to be some shred of light at the end of the tunnel in your mind, or was there not?
You know, it was just kind of, I think that mentality from the military of just kind of, you know, you can make it through anything. Just keep putting that other foot in front of the other, man. I mean, there was points, like I said, I just didn't want to be around anymore. But
at some point you had to, I don't know, as you said, you didn't know if it was an active decision, but at some point you picked up a book or you went online or you looked up something or you heard a story that was like, all right, I'm going to get out of this dark hole. I'm going to go fucking be productive, right?
Yeah, and I guess you could really say that the moment where I saw myself in the mirror and I didn't recognize myself kind of jump-started that. I was kind of walking through a haze before that, and that at least gave me some sort of purpose. Like, hey, you know, I'm going to make a change, even if it's the smallest, most insignificant thing in my life. I'm going to go do it. and I was really dead set on it, and it's what really set me on this entire path, all the way from, being that obese, drug addicted person to or I guess that was just afterwards, but just, freshly out of rehab to being the person I am today, loving who I am, being able to be in college and really pursue this passion that I've created out of this small little moment that happened. You know what I mean? And I guess that kind of, I hope that answers the question, but that was really, before that, it was just haze, man. It was nothing, and I guess I was just working up to that moment. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely kept me going this far. I think it's going to keep me going for a while.
And you mentioned obviously really wanting to help people. What would you, if someone came up to you randomly and said, man, I heard your story, I'm having a really, really hard time, and you don't have time to give them the whole thing, you have one thing, what would you tell them?
Oh man, that's tough. Just, I mean, like I've said, there's nothing that can come your way that you can't make it through, I remember that you hooked me up with a friend of yours that kind of went through a situation
Richie.
Very close to mine, yeah. And he had a skiing accident. He lost some use in his left arm, and he I don't know if he was super down, but he seemed a little down. And some advice I gave him was, no matter what happens, you can live a normal life. And he really took a lot from that. I could tell by the way he answered. And that's kind of how it is with anything. You can keep living a normal life no matter how bad you really think it is, how bad the situation is. It keeps going on. It never stops. You know what I mean? You might as well make the best that you can of it. And that's what I've tried to do since all of this happened. Just keep trying to make the best of the situation. It may not be ideal, and it may not be what you asked for, but it's what you got. So.
And for you, was it a lot of appreciating what you had? Or I should say what you have. Appreciate what... A lot of people spend their time worrying about what they don't have. And we've talked about this a lot on the podcast, but I think that is a key element in what gets people down and keeps them down is I wish I had this. I'm halted by this ailment, or I'm halted by this experience, or I don't even want to go to the victim thing, but it's like a choice. Do I think about, fuck, I wish I had that? However, I do, right next to me, have this really awesome mug that somebody made that I have filled with water that looks really sweet. You know what I mean?
For sure.
And I say it like that because I would imagine that it takes practice to start seeing things positively, and starting with something as dumb as a glass of water and not doing the half full, half empty thing. But you know what I mean? This is a cool glass. I could have a really shitty glass. I have a cool glass. Does that make sense?
I'm taking it so much deeper than that, because you have water.
Well, right.
That's so important, man. You have water.
Totally. Exactly.
That's all you really need.
Yeah.
And I think the point is that in any sort of gratitude practice, you can really start with the most basic of things.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad you brought that point up because I completely forgot it. As I was going on. There was a switch. I mean, at first, it was about everything that I lost during all of this, through me losing the use of my left arm and eventually my entire left arm, and through drug addiction and stuff like this. I lost a lot. And that's all I could really focus on. And it just kind of. I don't know when it switched, but I started, being grateful for other things, and a lot of it came from just time healing wounds. But it was also like I told you, I saw quadriplegics. How can you not be grateful for what you have when you see something like that? And that's why I'm really thankful for everything that I've been through, because it's things like this lesson that you're talking about, being able to see what's good about life instead of what's bad about life. I've been able to come to these realizations because of what I've been through, and I don't want to, I guess I don't know how this has been painted so far, but I am so happy about my accident, my drug addiction and my obesity, You know, everything that's happened to me has created the person I am today. You know, I try to be as humble as possible. I try to be as thoughtful as possible, and I try to be the best person I can because of all these things, because of all these experiences that I've, you know, had the pleasure of being a part of, you know, and not these terrible acts that I could think of them as, if that makes sense.
It's amazing. Real quick, just to tag that, like, do you know who Andy Frisella is? You ever listen to his podcast?
I don't know.
MFCEO. You guys ever listen to that?
No.
He was telling a story recently. So he was attacked in a knife fight and like almost died and like you could see the scars. But he just talks about a very similar thing. Like, he's so thankful that terrible thing happened because it sent him on the trajectory that he's been on since, and his whole life has changed for the better.
I think the important thing is that our perspective, our mindset, the way we think about things, it's our choice. Now, obviously, as we grow up, whether it's from parents or teachers or friends, you know, we're kind of given these narratives or these perspectives that we just unconsciously take on. But it really is our choice to say, hey, I have this glass of water and that's a really great thing. Or, hey, I only have this glass of water and I really wish I had something else right now. But once we really own that, then we're fully responsible and don't have an excuse, in the sense that from any moment, it's always our choice in how we look at things.
Yeah, and I also think that's the difference between like being a victim and taking the power back in your life. You know, because I had no problem playing the victim for a while, but it got to a point where like I wanted to rule my life again. You know, I wanted to have that power back.
And in the moment, it is just like in the moment, it's easier to do the heroin, but in the moment, it's easier to play the victim because then you're off the hook. Completely. And it's easier to put the blame or the responsibility on someone or something else. But you said you're taking control back, but inherently that means that comes with responsibility.
I think you actually just unpacked a question that I had of, would you change anything? But now the question that is in my head is, could you imagine if any of this was different? And where would you be today if any one of these details changed?
Yeah, this is a great question. I've had a lot of people ask that, especially just the fact that I've lost my arm. You know, a lot of people wonder if, you know, that's something I would ever change, and I wouldn't change any of it. And honestly, I don't know where I'd be, but I don't think I'd be happy about it because I enjoy everything that's ever happened to me at this point. You know, I enjoy my life. I enjoy what I'm doing. I wake up every day and think, you know, this is what I want out of life, you know, and to have any of that change, it could be better, but it could be a lot worse. You know what I mean? And so I think at this point, I can't even imagine having my left arm again. You know, I'm so used to just living life with one arm and having those interactions with people. I mean, I enjoy it. Like, I enjoy like going to a coffee shop and just bringing up a conversation with somebody and just having them have such a different perspective on life when they talk to me, you know? Because this isn't something like I almost feel grateful of how unique my situation is, you know?
It's a badge of honor.
Yeah, I love it, man, because people will be shy at first, but then they'll really start asking questions, and we can get really into some deep stuff right away instead of like, you know, pussyfooting around some like, how's the weather? And, you know, it really gives me an opportunity to get deep with people on a level because they can see my vulnerability show through, you know? I
think that is what initially drew me to you. I liked the book that you were reading when I walked into class. You're the first person I saw. You were reading an interesting book. Without hesitation, you told me about the book you were reading, and then it was really like the relationship just blossomed from there. We started hanging out. I think after that semester we went for a hike, and literally like we could unpack so many weird, random, minute, you know, small, detail-oriented things, anything. We would talk about astrology, we would talk about the dark web, and we would talk about, like everything. It went everywhere. And I've been in these situations with you where we would go and sit and we'd have all this work to do. And like right away, you're talking to a barista or something at the coffee shop, and it's just like, hey, you know, you're asking, you know, how's everything going, and like, what's up with that, and I think that's such a wonderful quality to have in life, and I think that's really going to be one of the things, one of many traits that will help you exceed in really trying to affect people in such a positive way.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. Even I remember opening up to you about not feeling like I could defend myself if I were to get in a fight, and had I not, been open to being vulnerable in that way, we would have never gone down this route with all the weightlifting, the kickboxing. I mean, I have an entire gym in my house now.
We built that gym.
Yeah, I mean, it's just. It's really, being vulnerable has really helped me in life, really connect with people in a different way than I've ever imagined possible before. It's been life altering, and I wouldn't have it any other way.
Now we just need On It to get it together and get those zombie bells back in stock for you.
Right.
So finish that gym finally. 8 years later, the next day, the gym is complete. Come on, guys, get it together.
Yeah, we'll get it one day.
So to start to wrap up, we have still more questions from the Facebook group. We really want to express, our appreciation for the Facebook group stepping up and really showing an interest in Daniel's story. I don't see how you couldn't have interest in Daniel's story. So we got one on more with the drug use, and then a couple finish with the military. So our friend Maria, who lives in Austin now, and I haven't seen in over a decade, but even her story is amazing. She's a great person. She's curious about your thoughts about safe injection centers, and do you think they would enable or ultimately help people who were in your position at one point?
Yeah, I have a lot of, unpopular opinions in this realm, I guess. I think safe injection is a great idea. I remember using dirty needles when I was back in my addiction, just because we didn't have, any sources for clean ones, and I didn't know if these people had disease. Yeah, it was terrifying, And thank goodness when I went to treatment, I got tested and I was fine. But it could have been the complete opposite. I could be living with something that I made a split decision choice with, because I was doing drugs and I just couldn't stop myself, And so I do think that safe injection sites would be a great idea. Now, on the flip side of that is nobody wants to live in a neighborhood that's right next to a safe injection spot. So what do you do with that? I don't know. But I do think we need to start taking the stigma out of drug addiction. It's the only way we're going to fix this thing. We can't fix something that we don't want to talk about, And so if we can get people to feel safe and get people in a spot where you can start putting counselors there, say, hey, if I know what you're doing now, but if you want to get help, we're right here. I think that would create so many more opportunities,
I could see you doing work, like extensive work, drug related with Dr. Carl Hart. And I think that is a figure that you and I have spoken about, and someone who sold drugs when he was younger and then went on to get a PhD, and he teaches at university level in Ivy League schools, and he's traveled around the world, and he said he's done drugs with everybody, from all the different walks of life. And he's a big advocate for, I think, is it like the Swedish way where everything is now legal?
I think that's in Portugal. Portugal has been on the forefront of legalization. When I was saying unpopular opinions, that's my opinion, is that every drug should be legal. Not only should it be legal, we should make it in country, tax it, regulate it, and let everybody have access to what they're already doing anyway. They're just getting it from Mexico or Afghanistan, and ISIS wouldn't be able to make so much money if they weren't selling their poppy plants to make heroin. I mean, that's just the idea of it. We're exporting all of our money through drug addiction. None of that's staying in-house. If we just make it ourselves, create centers where people can go do drugs and, like I said, set up counseling stations there where people, if they need to get help, they can go there and get it as well. And we'll create a great revenue for ourselves in a market that already exists, whether it's illegal or not.
It would also create less of variance, and you would actually know what you're getting.
Completely agree. I mean, we're having so many people die in Baltimore due to fentanyl-laced heroin. It's incredible. And the fact that we're not even thinking about, regulating our own is crazy when we have these pill mills all across the country just pushing drugs out like it's their job. It's just so insane. This entire war on drugs has been a complete failure, and I'll be happy when it's over.
Yeah, it's an interesting conversation, and I think the value, at least in this, is that we're doing our part and actually discussing it. And I think sometimes that's why things don't evolve, is because it's not talked about and discussed with different points of views in a respectful way.
I'm not sure if Matt or Daniel or anyone else listening watches the show Adam Ruins Everything, but I know Jordan does. And if you haven't seen the episode on, I think it's drugs or pharmaceutical drugs or street drugs, something of that nature, he really breaks down everything that Daniel is talking about, from how people get addicted to these prescription drugs and then how they end up using the street drugs, and how you can make such distinct connections between the street drug and the prescription drug and everything in between. And I would urge people to really check that out and get more into the conversation of this.
Yeah, I mean, we literally could spend a lifetime of creating podcast content around this. I want to transition over to Austin Trammell, who's currently serving in the Army, so we want to thank him for his service. And he's asking, assuming you're out, Daniel, what are some tips you have for somebody when they transition out of the Army? And obviously this is of interest to him because at some point he will walk that path.
Yeah, for sure. I think I had a really good opportunity when I got out, just because the unit I was with really walked me through every step. But the first thing I would say is that before you get out, make an appointment for every single ache and pain that you've ever had in your career, in your life. I don't care how small it is. Because if that flares up 20 years from now and it wasn't recorded that it happened in the military, they're not going to pay for it. So you need to record everything on paper. That way, just in case something does happen, you have it on paper saying that, this happened during your service and you're going to get taken care of. The next thing I would say is just make sure you get all your paperwork together. Make sure you have a DD-214 before you get out, because it's your retirement papers. And some people leave without really getting all the right paperwork, and then they're kind of screwed when they have to either find a job or something like that. I would also say start looking for a job before you get out. Don't wait until afterwards. It's a great recipe to just do nothing for a while, which is what I did. I sat around for about a year and was really not doing anything because I wasn't proactive in what my next step would be. And I think if you take care of those couple of things, you'll be great, man. Whether it's either chasing college with the GI Bill or just going straight to some government work, make a USA Gov or USA Jobs account and start looking for a government job. Either one would be great, man. Whatever you want to do, just make sure you have a plan before you get out. There's a lot of homeless vets. There's a lot of vets committing suicide. And it's because I think sometimes they're just not prepared or they just don't have the mentality for it. And you want to make sure you get as much done before you get out as possible, man.
Awesome. That's really, really actionable advice. And again, we want to thank you, Austin, and anyone listening right now who is currently serving or has in the past. Finally, we're going over to Jyotish Mani from Bangalore, India, who has two questions for you, Daniel. The first being, how has being stationed in another country affected your outlook on war and violence?
Yeah, my entire tour, I didn't get to see too many people off base and just meet with Iraqi people, but I did at times. We would fly overhead and these people would run out of their villages and wave to us while we're flying over and stuff. And just, what you see in the news isn't always what's correct. There's different lights they shed, and it's easy for us to talk about all the bad things that happen because there are a lot. But there's a lot of good people over there that have died, civilians that have died from drone attacks, from the wrong people getting shot, from anything. And we wouldn't have that in our own country. Why is it okay to do it in another country? And I just don't understand the way Obama has used, the drone strikes. I mean, he's used so many, and they're killing civilians at an incredible rate. It just worries me that we're not doing it the right way. I understand trying something, and if it doesn't work, though, we have to switch gears. And I don't think we're doing that yet. And I don't know what the right answer is, but we're still kind of at this kind of, just burn everything type of deal. I want to see us kind of switch over to something, we're never going to get rid of ISIS, it doesn't seem like. As soon as we cut one head off, two more grow back. It's just the nature of the beast. And so we have to find a way to get after their money. We have to find a way to discourage them in some other way than just mass killing their people. Because if you kill one guy and he has children, the American devil killed our father. That's just how it is, man.
And it's the same thing with gang warfare in Baltimore or anywhere else in the world. I guess as far as something like ISIS, I'd argue, I mean, obviously warfare is drastically different than it was even decades ago when it was really nation versus nation. And now it's really a war of ideology. And to me, at least, it doesn't seem like, as you said, you cut the head off and two will grow. So really, it can't be violence, but I think it has to just be either education or persuasion through hearts and minds.
Yeah, I mean it's a really tough road because we're dealing with some really irrational people over there, and it's getting even crazy now that we're talking about North Korea in the news, and I don't know what the answer is, but continuous war isn't the answer. The stuff that I saw at Walter Reed really messed up people physically, mentally, emotionally. I've seen it all over there. And that's not what we want for people that we call heroes. We don't want people messed up coming home, hundreds of people, if not thousands. So we need to make better choices. Like I said, it's okay to learn from our bad mistakes. But if we don't learn from it and we keep repeating it, then there's an issue. We can't keep sending people over somewhere to die. I'm not okay with that. And I just think it's time to switch gears. I guess that's easy for me to say when I don't have the answer, but there's a lot of smarter people in better positions that need to be on this thing,
So the final question he had, Daniel, what's your biggest takeaway from being in the Army?
I think it was along the lines of what I said before, just kind of knowing that I am capable of more than I ever thought possible. Any challenge that I was given in the military, I was not only told to do it, I was expected. It was not okay not to finish something. And so no matter what it was, you get it done, even if you're working 2 hours past the time you're supposed to be working, whether you're ruck marching, 13 miles with 100 pounds on your back, and you just keep literally putting the next foot in front of the other, going through the gas chamber and having that kind of fear beforehand and pain afterwards. It's been a great experience, just kind of learning how great I can be, you know what I mean? And it's really helped a lot.
Daniel, I think that's a great place to close, and I'm really looking forward to the next couple of years of us together finishing up school. I'm really, really looking forward to watching your journey and where you end up going with all of this, and there's very few people I would say this about in our program and in general, but I really hope that we continue to do work together and study nutrition and find progressive ways to test it on ourselves and be the guinea pigs and all that. And I know that for the three of us, we can't thank you enough for coming here and opening up and sharing your stories. And I know me personally, and I'm sure Jordan and Matt as well, we've learned so much more about you, and I have so much even more admiration and respect for you. And it's such an honor to have you here. And we just really thank you from the bottom of our hearts for doing this with us.
Yeah, I appreciate it as well. I just the opportunity to be able to share my story. I really hope people can pull something from this. This is the whole reason I came here today, and really just thank you so much.
If there are people out there, and we can put this out on the socials as well, but if someone is listening to this and they want to get in contact with you, is there a way to connect with you or some way to check out what you have going on?
Yeah, of course. You can look me up on Facebook, Daniel Barreda, Barreda, and also on Instagram, X One-Handed Bandit X. I have a lot of. I'm starting to post more inspirational stuff on there. It's, different weightlifting ideas and kickboxing, and just trying to get people motivated about life again, like I am.
You should. I don't know if you already have it. You should definitely join the Facebook group if you can, and then people can actually get in touch with you there directly. Might even be cool to start a thread, which is something that we've talked about doing with some of our guests, where you open up a thread and people can kind of ask you anything and go from there. And if there's private questions, that's up to you if you want to take them. But you
continue the conversation.
Yeah, that would be great. I mean, I am a part of the group. I kind of check in every time, once every once in a while, And so I'd be open to opening something if people are more interested in the story, for sure.
Yeah, I think based on just the amount of questions we got in the past 12 hours or so, there's plenty of people that are interested in connecting with you, and especially now that they've really heard your story in depth. So again, thank you, Daniel. This Facebook group that we are talking about, it's facebook.com/groups/chocolate croissants. It's a private group, and it's been very, very engaging and inspiring for all of us. It's really cool to see others start threads and conversations and, all kinds of different responses. And it's like people are helping people and connecting with each other. And it's just been one of the more gratifying aspects of this whole project for me personally. You can even connect with great people like Sean Gilbert from Poughkeepsie. If you have found value in this podcast, we want to ask you to do a couple simple things. One, if you have an iPhone, you have that purple app. The icon says podcasts. If you search Chocolate Croissants and you get to our page, in the top right corner, there's a button that says subscribe. If you click that, you will get these podcasts every single Monday morning. You don't have to think about it. And the downloads, it helps us a lot. Also, you can rate and review the podcast in Apple Podcasts. That helps us as well. Again, we want to thank you all for your attention. It is always appreciated. We do not take it for granted. And every day we are doing what we can, both as we record this content and the stuff we do in the Facebook group to really earn your attention and your trust and your respect. So again, we love you for that. We will have an incredibly talented and kind and just amazing guest next week. But we will let you find out who that is when that comes into your Apple Podcast app. Until next time, my friends. Bye-bye.